Well, the difference between a determinate and an indeterminate variety tomato is basically one is a very well-behaved tomato and the other one just goes everywhere. And this green zebra, which is our only determinate variety that we have out here, is a very well-behaved tomato. That is, it's got a predetermined size that it's going to be, and it's not going to get any larger than that. And there are a few things that can give you a clue as to being a determinate tomato. And first off, if you look down here, the internodes between the leaves are very short, and it's a very compact tomato. Now, this tomato is not going to get just too large. It's going to be a bush type of tomato, and it's going to set all of its fruit at about the same time. Each of these will end in a flower cluster, and it will bloom and be pollinated and set fruit, and then that fruit will all ripen at about the same time. And so these tomatoes actually ripen a bit earlier than the vining tomatoes that are indeterminate. Now, if you have a determinate type of tomato, you may not even need to stake it. And if you do need to stake it, you can use a smaller thing like one of these tomato cages that's actually not very large, but you can just put that around and that will contain your tomato. There probably won't be any reason for you to have to tie this or anything. Just have this cage around here and that will contain it. Now, with our indeterminate varieties, it's a different story. And over here, we've got a pink brandywine tomato, which you'll notice it's a potato leaf variety. It's got a little bit of a different leaf on it. And you'll notice down here that the internodes are much longer in between the leaves. And you'll also notice that we have these branches coming out here. Now, on the other variety, we don't have to prune those out. But on these, it's a good idea to prune these out. So if you look at the leaf axil here, we notice this is coming out. Now, that is actually another vine starting. And so we want to pinch those out of there to keep our vine under control. So I'll continue to do this as the tomato grows. About once a week, come through and look for those appearing at the leaf axils and pinch those out. Now, you can actually train these to where they've got one main stem coming up, or you can leave these to where you've got 2 or maybe even 3 vines coming up and stake those. You don't want more than that because the tomato tends to get unruly. Now, with an indeterminate variety, you'll need to stake it up, and this takes a little bit sturdier of a stake. Now, you can either use, like this, a large stake, and you're going to want it to be at least 4 feet tall and maybe even 6 feet tall, because these tomatoes like to grow up. Now you've got your stake in, then you can tie it, and you can use hose or something that has a little bit of give to it to tie these to the stake, because this vine will actually continue to get bigger. So you're not going to want to tie it too tight. And so if you have a material that has a little bit of give to it, then it will work a lot better. Now I'll just cut these off later, and as this continues to grow, I will again tie it as it grows up my pole. Now, you can also use something like this tomato ladder, which is very handy, and you can actually use that for maybe 2 sets of tomatoes. Set it there, and I could tie this tomato here, and I could tie this tomato here if I wanted to. Or you can use a large cage like this. Now, for these vining tomatoes, it's better if you set your cage to the side and then train your tomato up the outside of this. It'll be easier to get to your tomatoes. Well, let's go take a look at some of our tomatoes that we haven't staked and we haven't pruned out and see just how big those things can get. Now, this tomato is one of our unruly indeterminate tomatoes, and we haven't staked this one or pruned it, and you'll notice that it is actually starting to vine quite a bit. Now, if I look down in here, we'll try and see where the main stem of this tomato is. You'll notice that here it's coming along, and it goes up and snakes along up here. So this is actually our main stem of our tomato. But if you look down in here, remember I was talking about the vines that were coming out at the leaf axils. Here we have a leaf, and this is one of those little vines, remember, that I was pinching out, that didn't get pinched out. And every place that this happens, it starts to make another vine. And so you'll notice here, if you look along our tomato, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 more just on this portion of the plant, 4 more vines trying to come along. And so, if you want to keep your indeterminate tomatoes under control, you're going to need to stake them and prune out those extra vines. Now this actual tomato is a special tomato. It's a different species. Instead of being Lycopersicum esculentum like the other tomatoes, this is Lycopersicum pimpinellifolium. See if you can say that 3 times fast. But anyway, this is a wild tomato that is native to South America, and it is called a red currant tomato. And you'll notice we've actually got some small tomatoes down here, and one is ripe. Now these are very small tomatoes. Again, they look just like a red currant. And these are what they cross with other tomatoes to get a good cherry tomato. Now these have a tart flavor, and they're really good to throw into a salad. So we're anxious to start eating some of our little red tomatoes. Now finally, just remember that determinate and indeterminate, the determinate ones are the well-behaved tomatoes, and indeterminate are the unruly tomatoes, and they're going to require staking and some pruning and a little bit more care. But you should probably plant both in your garden so you have a good crop of tomatoes all throughout the summer.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.